This is Mark Livesey, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Someone tell me where the Humane Society of the United States has ever bought 1 acre of habitat, where they have ever funded one project that got rid of invasive weed species, where they've ever funded one project that got rid of the Asian carp in the Illinois River. I mean,
none of it.
Pick whatever it is. They've got net assets in the hundreds of millions, and they've never done anything.
I did this whole series of posts of the hierarchy of dead animals on Instagram, on social media. So I had like a picture of chicken. No one cares. Like dead, chicken meat. A picture of chicken. A picture of fish, like cut up fish. No one cares. A picture of an actual fish. Still, no one seems to give a picture of a dead turkey. No one seemed to care. It seemed like But then I showed bear meat. And I showed some bear meat that was just in a bag. What about that? And I'm like, now we're getting weird, right? Well, it's just meat, but it says bear on it. This is bear meat.
Yeah. We care about wildlife. We care about landscapes. We care about all the things that are necessary for conservation. We'll tax ourselves 11%.
But if I showed an actual bear, like we posted some pictures of he's taking me bear hunting, actual bears that I've killed. Gee, I've never had anything in my life where people get mad at me more.
Boom! The best. Your attitude will determine your altitude in your life. Your attitude affects everything.
And I have this craving, for whatever reason, to like make a difference in people's lives. Find a way. When you hit a roadblock, find a way around it. Yep. And to me, that was extreme ownership.
It's so brilliant.
All right. Okay, so we do have a podcast to record here.
Yeah.
I think
we should probably do that.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So, all right. So I've got Chad, Drop Jaw Flies, behind the camera, my friend Dwayne, and Eric Chesser.
Yeah, executive producer today on the set.
Yeah.
We're rolling Eric Chesser style.
Hush Life.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the Hush Life, directing everything today and helping us with this setup.
It was part of the agreement for having the Fireball in the background.
Yeah, he even decorated the set for us.
That's right.
So thank you. I mean, we're going to be obviously talking today about elk because we've got the Elk Whisperer himself with us, right?
Corey Jacobsen from Elk 101.
Elk101.com. If you haven't,
we're in the Mountain Offs World headquarters.
Yeah, we're in the elk shape capital of the world.
We got Jordan Harbertson on the mic right here.
Yep. And we're in the one room in the building that is under 84 degrees.
Barely.
I
think it's pushing 87.
Yeah. We're
turn the fan off.
I know. We're looking for new office space, and part of it's because we've outgrown the space, and two is because it's hotter than Hades in here.
Right. It's like snowing outside, but up here in this.
Up here, it's tropical. I mean, we've got,
It's more like
I was going to say it's
desert.
Not tropical. It's more like nap weather.
Yeah.
I don't know how you work anything past 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's bad.
By the way, though, this elk is ridiculous. Every time I see it, I'm just like blown away.
We call him a magnificent elk.
It doesn't even
He's
look
incredible. This guy is everything you've ever dreamed of. When you think, all of us kind of have a different, when you look at the antlers, each of us kind of have characteristics that we like. Some guys really like big fronts, guys like a big whale tail or like thirds or fourths. This bull, respectively, has everything you could ever dream or want. It has everything. It has.
I can't even dream up this formation.
No. This is one of a kind.
You know what I mean?
This is one of a kind.
Corey has a one of a kind that is, what is it? The thirds are like
20, 22, 23 inches, 55 inches tip to tip. But that's its characteristic.
Dude, it blows your mind. When you look at it, you're like, that just doesn't look real.
It just looks it looks completely unreal. And and then the palmation in the back, and he's got soda cans for bases and carries that completely throughout the beam. And Eric, if any of you guys are watching this, go check out the Hushin' Boys. I think we might have even mentioned it before in other podcasts.
Yep, they were on an earlier podcast.
The video that Eric put together on this bull and this hunt is pretty freaking cool. Really cool story. Talk about the highs and lows of hunting, and literally the highs and lows of elk hunting that I'm sure we'll talk about today. But even so, defining and being defiant against even your friends. I mean, here's a story. When you go and watch this video on this bull and this cool experience, and you probably experienced on hunts, going back somewhere where everyone tells you not to go. Don't go there. Don't go do it. You've already been there. Or this has already happened or transpired. And yet Eric said, forget that. Like, I'm going to follow my heart, my instinct, and what I feel is going to be the best for my hunt. And he went back and did it. And so the fireball.
Yeah. Persistent. It's a great video.
So spoiler alert when you watch it.
He gets the bull.
He got the bull, everybody.
So today we have a couple of podcasts we're going to do here with Corey and maybe Jordan. Tonight, though, I want to get into entrepreneurship, business.
Oh, I like it.
We could do that.
Because a lot of people are whether they're in the hunting industry or not, they have a drive to know more or to run a business, you know. And there's a lot of skills, a lot of books that we've read, a lot of knowledge, and we've all been successful to various degrees,
levels,
right? In businesses we've done and investments we've jumped into financially and so forth. And so I thought we could kind of get into that tonight a little bit and talk about.
I think it's cool to look at a lot of the overlaps. You know, as I'm diving more and more into learning about business, there's so many overlaps that apply to life, that apply to elk hunting, and you know, just whether you're an entrepreneur or not, there are things that you can glean from learning about it that will increase the quality of everything you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Recently, Jordan.
Yeah.
This is going to be awesome.
This is going to be awesome.
I always like it when he starts out that way.
Actually, Corey and I read a book that I don't think you've read.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're implying that I don't read?
No, you read lots on Instagram.
Count?
You read lots on social media.
I read a lot of content, and that's the thing that you know, parents today forget about millennials is we're reading a lot of content.
Yes,
okay?
you are.
It may
How
be
many
only
words
100
per minute?
Yeah, it may only be 152 characters on a tweet, but that could have so much information in it that you know,
True.
compounded to this, it's like reading a whole book.
Totally.
Yeah, when you read enough tweets or enough Instagram posts or Facebook.
And I watched Jordan roll through his Instagram feed. Words per minute, we're like 800 words per minute reading there.
He's like, you didn't read that. I was like, yeah, I actually did every post.
This is what happened.
Yeah.
He tells me about it.
I
He
double
even
tapped right
knew-
after it.
He even knew the hashtags.
It's true.
We got you by like 10 years.
True story. Let's see. I'm 30. So you guys got me by 10?
Ish.
12-ish.
12-ish. A decade. You
Could have left it at ish, Brian.
Yeah. Well, true. But we read this book called Extreme Ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
By
Definitely
Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin.
Definitely want to check that out.
Oh, you should.
And Corey, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book? How did you get into it? How did you find the book? How did you come across it?
Several different avenues, I guess, led to it. But ultimately, I'm trying to absorb as much information as I can on business because Elk 101 has continued to explode and evolve, and we're ready for the next step. And we've got a ton of really cool things planned, and I just want to get as much perspective as I can from people who have been successful. And so the premise for this is it's written by a commander of the U.S. Navy SEALs. And
that's right. I have seen a promo for this book.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one that I actually had put on a list of books that I would like to read, or I listen to audiobooks when I come into work. So
yeah.
And so it's basically the premise is how U.S. Navy SEALs lead and win. Yeah. And they've started a consulting businesses on leadership and winning in the business world. And there's just so many great things, but ultimately it's called Extreme Ownership. And the premise is you own it. And that's, teamwork, leadership, everything. It's all tied in there. And so what I'm getting out of it is for business, yes, there's applications. And a lot of the examples he uses are bigger business, which Elk 101 is just me right now. But we are expanding. And so it's been helpful to help me kind of map out the leadership roles within Elk 101 and management skills. But even deeper than that, it's just the life lessons of owning what you do. It's you. You can't blame other people. And when you start blaming other people, there's not a winner. And that goes into hunting and everything.
I'd agree with that.
I first came across Jocko on Joe Rogan's podcast, and it's one of my favorite podcasts that Joe has ever done. And his name is Jocko Willink, and he was also on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and now he has his own, I think. So, but he related his experience. I think in both, listening to those podcasts they're powerful. They're good. And the things that you learn I can only imagine, because I didn't serve in the military. I wasn't in combat. Okay. But the things you would learn in that situation, like a pressure cooker, right? Like, you better learn, and you better learn quick. And the opportunities for leadership, you're at the highest stakes. You're talking about human life.
Totally.
Here. So,
and chaos, like absolute chaos.
And so there's absolutely, like, that experience to me is invaluable, that someone could obtain what they learned through that experience fighting for their life or for other people. And so, I was really intrigued after hearing him talk and hearing what he had to say to get into the book and read it. And I'm really glad that I did. On that note, I mean, I've read a lot of other books that echo a lot of the same things. Okay, but I would say that this is probably one of the best books I've ever read on leadership. I've read Entre Leadership with Dave Ramsey. I've read a lot of the books by Gary Vaynerchuk. A lot of books from. I like Dave Ramsey a lot. I've read a lot of his books, but this book was on another level of first of all, it's so easy to understand and follow. Corey, are there any, like, stories in the book that stood out to you?
So I like the way it's laid out, because they start every chapter with military experience on the ground combat lessons that they learned about leadership. And whether it's failure or success, they play that out. And then they talk about application and examples, in real life business, how they've been able to apply that and how it's worked. And so I find myself, I'm reading through, and I'm excited to get to the next chapter to read about the military experience and to read about some of the combat situations that they were in. But the one, I actually was speaking to somebody yesterday, and they were in a situation in just life in general. They were overwhelmed. And it just felt like, the weight of the world was on them. And I was able to pull from that and talking about the one chapter on prioritize and execute. And just saying, okay, you're bogged down by 6 or 7 things going on. But when we broke it down, there was only one thing that was critical that needed to happen. But the weight of everything else. So when we look at it and prioritize what's most important and then execute on that, the weight was lifted off of their shoulders. And in business, I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is.
And so for me, that part on prioritize and execute was really stood out, that I'm a one-man show at Elk 101. I've got to just set priorities and then execute on them in that order and not get bogged down by looking ahead at some little thing that's trickling up.
That stood out to me too. I like how he says it. He says, I think he says prioritize, stop, analyze, prioritize, make a decision.
Yep.
And I think that make a decision part, people get frozen in indecision in all walks of life. You even see it when you're hunting.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like, a guy is like, he can't decide whether he should go on the stalk, whether he should stay there and wait, whether he should go this way, and so he does nothing.
I got a phone call one day at work from a guy that was on the mountain. He's like, hey, can you hear that? I'm like, no, what is it? And he's like, there's an elk bugling 100 yards away. What do I do? It's like, that doesn't even cross my mind to pull out my cell phone and call somebody and ask them. That indecisiveness, you just missed an opportunity there.
You have to act so quickly.
You do.
That. You have to know what you're going to do in that situation. And even in, as life, if we're relating this to hunting and hunting scenarios and situations. And it's funny because I'm so interested and excited to read this book as you guys are kind of diving into it, because this has been on my list of books. And in entrepreneurship, the thing that's important for people to understand, we're talking about one book. There's so many books out there, and there's so much information that's available that can help to give you more information that can help you to eliminate and alleviate mistakes and bad choices.
You learn from somebody that's been there.
Yeah, if you can, exactly. You can gain, you think about it like, being an entrepreneur is being at war a lot of times, not only with yourself in your respective industry or space. And so like that situation where you have, a bull that just bugled at 100 yards, you have to instinctively as a hunter, make that decision quickly as to, okay, what is my next step? Well, I would say your next step is wherever that came from, you're heading in that direction. Okay, so you need to close that gap. If it's 100 yards, then, there's obviously certain things that you need to prepare for checking your surroundings, checking wind. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's not
And again, that
easy, but
prioritize.
I would never call my buddy, even if it's the elk whisperer himself. I wouldn't call Corey and be like, I just heard a bull at 100 yards. What should I do?
What do I say to him?
Well, Jordan, have you talked back to him yet? Are you headed that way? You know what I mean? Like, but hey,
but
he loves and trusts you enough, right? That he was like, I need to know what do I do.
But what I'm getting at though is there are a lot of people that get frozen in
decisions.
So
absolutely,
Jordan, in your business at Mountain Ops, you and Casey, I've witnessed you guys make decisions, move on, prioritize, make decisions, move on. I found in my own career throughout my life that the people that moved up in business, that moved ahead, were people. Often, they were the people who actually were the decision makers. They made choices. I've worked with a lot of people who are like, well, we got to check with our boss.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm supposed to take this route or not. I need to check with so-and-so and then find out.
But that goes back to that boss should have read Extreme Ownership because the way he can delegate and lead is to empower them to be able to make those decisions. And sometimes, I find myself a control freak. It's hard to delegate. It's hard to turn loose of that control. And then you end up with a whole bunch of workers who aren't able to make decisions because they're waiting on you to do that. And so a big part of being a good leader is letting those under you make decisions.
And yes. I think it goes both ways, but I have often seen people where they have the power to make the decision, but they just don't want the responsibility.
Yeah.
They just don't want to. They need to be told what to do.
Yep.
Progress.
And I think you will just never be that successful as long as you always need to be told what to do or you need permission to take the next step.
Exactly. Progress and success is rooted in decision. That progress and that success is going to be determined by that decision. It doesn't always mean, hey, to be successful, just make a lot of decisions, you'll be successful, right? That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is, and this is true at Mountain Ops, people ask Casey and I often, and Trevor, how has Mountain Ops been successful? And there's a lot of things you can say. It's decisions. Decisions is a very important piece, and execution. I mean, when you think about, if we're talking about military and tactics and stuff like that, an individual, like this individual who wrote this book, had a plan. Had to have a plan because he was responsible for a troop or a group of men and women that he was taking into combat. So he had to have a plan. When that plan was put in place, they then went to execute it. And then as that plan started to unveil itself or unfold, things may have happened within that they have to make quick decisions to change in combat. Nothing goes to plan all the time in combat. Yeah. And that's a lot like business. You may have a business plan. And we did in the beginning of Mountain Ops. We said, here's our plan and here's what we want to do. Casey and I put that plan together. Once we had all the pieces in place, we then went to the execution. Once we had execution and we started to deliver our plan, a lot of things started to shift and change. Yeah. And we had to be ready for those changes to then make the decisions that we felt were going to be the best to stay on course and maintain, the momentum and the progression and the ultimate success of the company. We're a young company by all means. We're just had our 2-year mark and we're moving into year 3. And so we are what they say in business is like you're at kind of this make and break. At year 2, companies have kind of all this lust and love about them and excitement. And you either go like this and you maintain respectfully that, or you kind of tank.
Yep. The excitement's wore off. Now what?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that because of good decisions,
you're going down, baby,
and execution, we are going out of business. Everybody, we're having a sale next week, so make sure you check it out. You thought Black Friday was awesome? Just wait for the going out of business sale.
There you go. You heard it.
We're liquidating everything. No, we are as a business in such an incredible position because of decisions that have been made by Casey and I. And when you talk about Corey, putting the right people in place. And it's so hard because as Casey and I have experienced, Casey and I have for many years, we've been doing this for now, I think we're in year 13 of marketing and doing it for the outdoor industry.
So you started when you were 9?
Started when I was like 9 years old. Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. And I remember as Mountain Ops started to grow, we had to start looking and decide how do we allow ourselves to grow more? And that decision, we had to let other people do some of our job. And that was hard.
So hard.
Because you have a certain way that you like to do things. Yeah. Like you have a certain way that you like to run Gritty Bowmen in your podcast. And to bring somebody else on and have them do that would be very hard to do.
I brought Chad on, which has been great. That's been it's been a challenge, but it's been awesome, and I have to. I'm at that stage where I can't do it all, or I can't keep up.
Yeah, you hit a wall.
You can do everything at a subpar level, but if you want to do everything and execute at a higher level, you can't do it all.
And I think leadership, you can't, if you don't have a team, you can't lead them.
Yep.
Right? So you have to have people you work with. Otherwise, you're a one-man show, and that's fine. But I don't think you can grow at the level that I want to be at, or the things I want to accomplish. So I need a team.
Yep. And
with that team, it's been nice and I have Gritty's sister. I got Katie.
Oh, yep. Katie is awesome. Katie has been the cornerstone of the success of Mountain Up. She has literally been like the keystone that holds it all together.
Yeah, not only for Gritty Bowmen, but Katie has helped me with Elk 101 to be able to I'm like, hey, what's this whole monetization of YouTube videos? And she's like, you aren't monetizing your YouTube videos?
Oh, yeah.
She set me up.
Katie is awesome. And the team is so important.
And so important. We've worked together a lot. And with Katie, there has been one of the things that she has struggled with is making a decision without me. Partly because as a leader, I want it done. I'm such a control freak like Corey that I'm like, you did that wrong, right? When she made a decision and I'm criticizing it. So it's taken me some effort to empower her, and then be okay with those results, and then and together work through them to get better results.
Yeah. Absolutely, because we respectfully, the three of us sitting here, we have so many hours in a day and so much that we can do as a one-man band, right? And we may be able to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things, but when it comes to growth, progression, not only individually, right, but collectively, when you talk about a team, the key to success in any company is, one, its leadership, and two, its personnel, its team. You have to have a lot of other things that obviously add to that success. You have to have, if we're talking about a lifestyle brand or a brand like Mountain Up's example, you have to have a great brand in place, have to have a great product, and then you have to take care of everything else. And when I look at success, the line, it's so funny when you hear the word success, everybody, and I think my generation, speaking to you millennials that are listening to this, you can probably agree to this because I see this a lot, and I'm sorry if this is going to offend you, but this is just the truth because I'm seeing this more and more. Success is a lot of hard work. And I remember one day my dad, and I actually saw a graphic about this later, my dad drew out the line for success because my dad is an entrepreneur. Him and his brother, Rob, started a business themselves 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Before I was even born, it was like 85-ish, and then and has been widely successful. Yeah, you guys are sitting here nodding your heads like, we were just graduating high school. What? Like I was just starting my degree. But my dad drew this line for me, and he said, all right, son, I'm going to help you understand the road to success. It's very simple. And so he said, here you are, and here is success. And then he drew this line, and as it got halfway up to success, he started to go everywhere. It became this cluster. And then all of a sudden, it finished, and you were at success. And I remember learning from that from my dad. He says there's going to be a lot of hard decisions and a lot of tough things you're going to go as a business. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. That's both personal, that's both collectively. He says, but if you stay the course and you endure well and you make good decisions, you'll come out ahead. You'll be successful. But it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that, and I'm excited to read this book because combat definitely isn't easy. And being extreme in your business, being a business owner is not easy. Yeah. It is not.
One of the other parts of the book that I really stood out for me, he's talking about, he's talking to a sales force, like a remote sales force. Okay, the management team has come on board at a company, let's say a Fortune 500, and they've said, go out here and train our sales force, on leadership. So they go out and they meet with the guy who's in charge of this remote office, and they're meeting with him, and they're like, okay, management wants you to adopt this strategy and this sales thing and da-da-da-da. And the guy's like, they don't get us. Like they're totally, they don't understand what we're doing. And there's nothing I can do about it. And I'd love to be more successful, but they're not in the trenches with us. So they don't get it. And what they're asking us to do won't work. And I've heard that all across the board, so many places that other people involved in the outdoor business, people who are in construction. I've seen them come along and just be like, I'm defeated. Like this superior, my boss just doesn't get what I'm doing.
It's almost like they're in direct competition with their own team.
Yep. So there's nothing, I'm done. It's over. There's no way to get around this. And Corey, I mean, what is your take on that from the book?
You own it, and that's what the book's about, is extreme ownership. You have to, at the end of the day, if you're a true leader, it's all on you. And that, you can't make excuses. You can't say my boss doesn't do this, or this company department is restricting us and it's their fault. It's on you. And if you're going to be a true leader, you've got to find the way through that. And it goes back to the map your dad drew. There's the ups and downs and those squiggly marks, and that can be the roadblock. If you want to end it right there, you can let that kill it, or you can find a way through it and continue on that climb up there. But, it goes into every part of life. And, with a teenage son, that's a principle I'm really trying to teach. You own it. You can't blame other people. You can't use other people as the scapegoat for failure. And it goes to elk hunting and everything. You made the decision to hunt that week. Find the way around the challenges. That's exactly, when they're talking to this individual, they're like, whose fault is that? He's like, it's management's. He's like, no, it's yours. It's your fault. Very bluntly. What do you mean it's my fault? Yeah. It's not my fault. And I've noticed that extreme ownership requires a lot of humility. Yeah, that's one of the chapters is lose the ego. Lose the ego. Because if you have an ego, then you can't take ownership. There's always somebody that you can blame it on. There's always some excuse.
It's easy to deflect failure, to make yourself feel that you didn't fail. One of the things we're really good doing it as humans is just that, is we're scared of failure. Yeah. Everybody is. If you're not human. That's part of life. That's not just part of business. That's part of life, failing. But it's what we do in those failures and in those moments when we are failing or we've made a mistake that really define us and who we are and who we'll become. And so when you think of that line to success, and that success can relate to hunting, that can relate to business, that can relate to your personal life and family, there are a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of roundabouts. But by staying the course, owning it, by owning your own failures, accepting those failures, and learning from those failures. I think that's things that often I see in not only myself, that I've learned through this course of not business. I've been a part of businesses before Mountain Ops, is just that learning from those failures and what you do will ultimately determine your outcome and your success. And to be honest, and I think every one of us sitting here can agree that it is not easy, just like anything. It's very hard to suck it up and take one to, for the team and say, I failed. I remember real briefly, just recently with Mountain Ops, there's a situation that came about, and it was my fault. It was. And I had almost in my mind picked a route to figure out why it wasn't and who I could put it on. I was like, oh, I can deflect easy. I can put it on you, and I can make it seem like it was your fault, and I'll almost manipulate it to the way it's like it was your fault. This is why this didn't happen that way. And you can probably get everybody to buy off on that. Oh, absolutely. Totally. Well, yeah, they're like, oh, sorry, it's I apologize, Jordan. And I could have done that. I easily could have done that. And I remember sitting into the team, and I had to sit there when the goal wasn't met, and everybody said, well, why didn't we meet it? And somebody brought up why they thought. And it kind of was my responsibility. And I had to sit there in front of 5 or 6 people and say, I am sorry. This was my fault. I could have done this better. And here I am sitting here, and it sucked. You owned it. It's hard when somebody. I had to own it. It's very hard to do that. Yep. And if you fail again, it's hard to do that again. Especially if you've delegated to 2 or 3 people below you. Yeah. And then they didn't do their part of it. Yep. But ultimately the whole point of extreme ownership is it's still your fault. It doesn't matter. You are the root. You are the beginning. If you delegate, but it's also your responsibility to follow up and execute and make sure. So if those people are failing, that's not necessarily their fault. There's some fault maybe in that individual, but it does, as a leader, it comes back to you. And I think it's so important, one of the things that they say in the book, it's so important to have clear expectations to the team
Because if you don't do that and they go and fail, it's still on you.
Yeah.
They may have been the ones that made all the wrong moves that led to the failure, but because you didn't explain it or didn't set the right expectations or they didn't understand the objective, the end objective. What are we really trying to do here? They're making decisions that maybe you're going 180 degrees from what what you're thinking or what you're trying to accomplish. It's because you didn't explain to them what we're trying to do here.
Is there a chapter in the book that talks about communication?
Oh, yeah.
It has to be, especially with combat and these guys.
Yep.
And that right there is probably...
That's part of that's one of those elements of leadership. I think it's the whole chapter.
Yeah.
It's got to be, because that's like one of the biggest parts of that.
I can remember when I first went, I first started consulting. So I'd been doing work for a few companies after I had graduated, and for a number of years, I got to where I was fairly skilled in consulting in the area of well, it was Sarbanes-Oxley compliance is where I was really spending a lot of my time, which is just...
Is that a foreign language?
It's called the Accounting Employment Act.
What did you just
say?
Anyway, so...
Wow,
I'm sorry.
Make yourself sound smart.
Sorry, Brian, I don't speak Spanish.
Anyway, I was doing consulting around business, and I was at this company, and...
He was important.
And they had... So I bailed on... I went independent, right? I'm entrepreneurial. I'm like... I have companies that I think I could sell my services to without a middleman. Like, it's me. And so I got in some interviews and pitched some sales and made some bids, and now I'm working, right? And I'm getting paid hand over fist, and it's great, right? It's like, and I'm my own boss. I'll show up when I want. I'll leave when I want, right? But I got a lot of work to do because I promised to have something done in 2 months, and it's big. And if it's not done in 2 months, this company has serious ramifications on their financial statements. So they need me to be there and execute. And I remember getting there and having to work with some of the most difficult human beings I've ever met. And there's this one dude that I went to meet with, and I called him, and I'm like, I'm so-and-so. I'm here to do this job, and and I just need to interview you to ask you some questions about this process you perform at the business, and And he's like, I'm busy. Okay, and then I'm busy. A week goes by, I'm busy. And then we'd have a meeting, and he just wouldn't show up, right? And so I have some options, right? I can just be like, well, I'll have to work around him. Maybe I'll call somebody else, or I'll talk to his boss, and then his boss will talk to him and stuff like that. Well, but I'm like, look, I own this. I have a deliverable I have to get done.
I have a deadline I've got to meet.
And I got to meet this thing one way or another. I own this. Yep. This is me. And I don't want to be the guy that has to go and talk to the CEO in order to get people to work with me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm me. I should be able to, he paid me to come in and do a job. I need to be able to do it.
Yep.
And so I wasn't going to run to daddy and say, help me just yet. And so I'm asking around. I'm like, okay, how come I can't get with people I had already developed some relationships with for a few weeks? I'm like, okay, I got to get this guy. He's a key part of this. They're like, well, he shows up at 5:00 every morning, and he just kind of sits at his desk and has a coffee and a donut, and he just kind of hangs out. And then, right around 8, people start to show up, or 7:30. But during that time in the morning, you might be able to get him to, because he's like, I have no time. So I showed up at, before 5, and I'm at his desk, and I'm waiting there.
With coffee and a donut.
Exactly, with coffee, and I had a cookie. And he comes walking in, and he looks at me, and you want some coffee? You want a donut? And I hook him up, and I'm like, you got some time now? And it's kind of hard to say no.
Yeah.
And
he's
he's
like,
like,
in a really tough spot.
he's like, well, okay, I guess so. And so we start talking, and he realizes I'm not there to skewer him. I'm just there to do
You're on
the
the
job.
same team. That's the
Yep. And we get to develop a relationship, and then it becomes a huge part of that process. And then, I'm able to succeed and get the work done. And not to toot my own horn, but that is an attitude I've tried to keep throughout my life, and has really helped me be successful. Find a way. When you hit a roadblock, find a way around it. Yep. And to me, that was extreme ownership. Yeah. It was the other part that really stood out to me was when you have, manage. I've always said manage your manager. whoever's your boss. Like we have a few sponsors that support Gritty Bowmen. I don't just sit there and say, what do I do?
Wait for them to ask you to do something
Yeah.
to promote them.
I'm like, you're my partner. And so I manage them and I'm like, okay, guys, I saw that you guys are, doing this. I'd like to get involved. How about I help you by doing X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
And they're like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. How can I be proactive and help you guys do my job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I find that attitude of managing up, working with those partners proactively is extreme ownership. It's taking ownership for the whole thing. You're not just sitting there going, well, you didn't call me when you needed that help and when you did that promotional deal and I didn't know about it, so I didn't do anything. And, I try not to be that guy. I try to be the guy that goes out and says, what are you doing? How can I help you? Let's make this happen.
Or even beyond that. And a lot of what we're talking about with extreme ownership is such a close complement to, I'm actually reading The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim
Ferriss.
And there's so much complementing to what we're talking about here. He talks about not saying, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? And leaving an open-ended question that just creates more indecisiveness, giving options. If somebody asks you that question, say, I don't know, what do you think? You say, well, we could do this or this. Do you like either of those options? And that's the same with a partner, a supervisor, a manager. You go to them and present them, here's some options that I think we could do that would really help out.
The last chapter I read in Extreme Ownership, where I'm at right now, he says, don't ask your boss what to do and ask him if it's okay if you do X, Y, Z. He said, tell your boss, I'm going to do X, Y, Z.
Yep.
And then wait for that response.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then what he'll do is he'll respond by saying, okay, why are you doing that? And then come to understand your plan and either maybe add a few changes to it, maybe adjust things. But here's the thing that I've learned on this is, and we were fortunate in our business. We have some individuals who kind of you could say, sit on a board and kind of advise and counsel with Casey and Trevor and I on how to continue the growth of this business. They're very successful men. And one of the things that they've always taught us and said is in those discussions is we're talking about like, hey, like don't just leave it open-ended or, when you start having discussions about business decisions, make sure that each one of you, that when you come to that table, and this is, I think, a lot of times, not just entrepreneurs, this could be anybody that's has a job and answers to somebody. There's kind of that timid attitude of like, I'm afraid to ask because, I don't feel that I have the responsibility or that I have the power to do so. Right. So they just kind of say, hey, what do you want me to do? The best employees and the most successful people are exactly, not to toot your own horn. Not that you need any more tooting on the horn.
But Brian is the model.
What you are the model. No, what you described, not just in business, in life, is the best attitude you can have in all things, which is to be proactive, not to be reactive, but to be proactive. And to be in where you probably, like you call me up. Okay, here's, for example, on this note, you call me up. You say, Jordan, hey, I'd like to do a podcast, or you're like, hey, I want to do this. What do you think about this and this? You never just call me and say, would you like to do a podcast? Or you never say, hey, Jordan, what do you think we could do? You're always like, you're providing me, and then we sit down, we have a discussion. And one thing that I think is important for people to understand when you're having discussions and you're making decisions or you're providing information is to remember that it is not who's right, but what's right. And I think people forget that often. Everybody has great ideas.
Yeah.
Make sure you provide suggestions and you follow that not with a question, but also with, hey, here's what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
But remember, as you're having discussions, it's a team effort in business and in life and in hunting, that even when we're sitting around talking about hunting, well, we should go do this, or I think we should do this. Okay, it's not who's right. It's what's right. What is right for the situation? Let's address the situation. Let's find out what's right for that situation, because all parties involved bring value to the table and bring an opportunity.
Yeah.
So when you're having a discussion, remember that in your discussions, you have an opportunity to present something to someone, and if they come back to you with like changes, don't close off, but be open to discussion and saying, how can we make those adjustments, those changes, and your example is, I can't stress enough, even in my role and what I do for Mountain Ops and what I see is I love people that are so proactive. I love people that are motivated, that are driven, that are passionate, that are excited, that you can just see because they don't wait on you. They don't wait for you to say that it's okay. They go and do.
Yep.
And then they will consult with you and say, do you think I should change this? Or
Somebody who asks for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. So, what's the saying? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Than
If you want to get something done, you can't wait for
you got to make a decision.
Yep. Someday you need to visit my treehouse. So I built this treehouse, and some people saw it, and they're going to be like, "Say what?" And then other people have heard about it. But but when I graduated from college, and Suzanne did, she had a degree in interior design, and I had been doing construction to get through school, and then so I had a construction company, and we had all these leftover building supplies. And my parents own all this land, and my wife and I were watching like Home and Garden TV one day because we were nerdy like that, and they had this Extreme Tree Houses special where they showed like 30 tree houses. And I was like, dude, I could build that. My wife's like, then do it, man. That's awesome.
That totally sounds just like your wife.
So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we start scoping out places and stuff. And my parents are like, we got all this acreage. Throw a tree house up at our place.
And they're probably thinking, build a tree house, a little 6 feet off the ground,
Suzanne
a little 4x4 platform.
Suzanne starts drawing these big plans on how to design it and build this house and put it in a tree, and we're consulting with engineers and arborists, and
oh my God!
And it's becoming like this huge deal, right? And I read like 3 or 4 books on tree house building and consult with a bunch of people that have built tree houses. And anyway, it just kind of, as it does with me sometimes, it sort of just
out of control.
It just sort of grew into something much larger. Well, when we went and tried to talk about it for getting permits and things like that, the city and stuff, there was all these people that said, you can never do that. This won't work. This isn't an option. And it was just roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And we just started, finding ways around those things and asking questions and being okay. And I think a lot of people just get told no, and then they're just like, okay,
I guess
there's
that's
no.
it. Yeah.
It's just there's no way to do it.
Yep.
There's almost always a way. It might it might be a lot harder. It might take a lot more work. We ended up doing a lot of things to try to make the structure up to code and make it reasonable and all that. And in the end, it's been a cool project, and we found a way to make it work. And like I said, a lot of people just give up. Mm-hmm. They have an idea or a dream or something, and they hit some things along the way, and when they get told it can't be done, they stop.
A lot of people will, whether it's actual situational roadblocks where people are actually like something happens in the process of the project being built, like in reference to your treehouse, or actual individuals tell you it can't be done, right? It's so interesting because I can remember so vividly. Again, I'm young. I'm 30. Sorry, guys. So
it's not all that young. You'll be 40 before you know it.
It's crazy.
I think I have a kid your age.
It's crazy to think about it. I've for so long I've been sitting here telling people I'm 21 or I'm 22. I've been in my 20s, and I'm coming into my 30s, and it's like I'm 30. And you hit a point in your life where you start to look back and realize and appreciate where you've come and where you're going. And like you guys who are my elders, I have 10 years of goodness that looks like ahead of me compared looking at where you're at. But
what's that mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to take that.
It just means you guys are awesome. So just take it. I'm just tooting your guys' horns a little bit more, okay? It's what this is all about. No, on that note, Brian, I remember so extremely vividly, and it's something, when you talk to any entrepreneur or you talk to any successful person, there's always kind of a point where they just kind of like, it happened. Where it's like, this was the moment that I just knew that I was never going to stop until I got to the finish line. I was going to do whatever it took. I was never going to surrender.
Yeah.
Per se. And I still remember, and I tell this story a lot when people ask me like, wow, you're so young and you've gotten to where you are now. How have you been able to get there and navigate this? And man, how do I do it? And I remember so vividly, so many times, I had a lot of people, and I'm not, when I say this, guys, anybody who's listening, I want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not saying don't go to college. Okay, college is important, and there's a lot of education and a lot of good schooling that can be gained from those institutions and for what job you're going into or what you're.
That's where I learned all my biggest words.
Right, those were when he starts speaking in Spanish or using $5 words. That's right. He's a college graduate, and I obviously don't use very many $5 words because I'm a dropout. So
sometimes I get some $10 ones in there.
Oh, dude, and when you get those, I'm just like, whoa, that's over my head. I'm gonna have to go look on Wikipedia to know what that means.
That had to have like 3 or 4 syllables.
Yeah, that's crazy. How did you connect that? Is that one word? I had a point in my life that I was sitting there and I was contemplating, like, had a secure job. I was working for a marketing company. I love my job. I was great, but I started to see that this company wasn't making the right changes to change with the market and stay relevant. Even as a marketing company, they just weren't adapting to, like, social media at the time was blowing up all these things. And I was young and excited and wanted to do things. And at that time, I was only taking I was in a semester of college and was going in to learn. And at this point, I'd already been doing 6 years of this. And so I got to college and I started to hear the teachings. And for me, again, everybody listening, I was like, you know what? I kind of know a lot of this. I've had a lot of experience. I don't know if I want to invest my time here. I think maybe my best thing to do is to go start my own business, right? And I remember when I started to tell my friends that and explain to them, hey, I'm going to forego college and all this, and I'm just going to leave my job that has great pay and
poor
all
Jordan.
this. And I'm going to, and I cannot begin to tell you the amount of people who, and I'm trying not to get emotional, but who told me, Jordan, you can't do it. That's not how it works. You won't be successful. And I still remember a big fight that I got around this time of year, around Christmas. It was a Christmas party. And one of my good friend's brothers, like literally in the middle of this party, like started to rebuke me that I was going to be a failure, that I was doing not only my wife, but my future children a disservice, that there's no way you can succeed without school and basically going by the books.
Yeah.
And that was a turning point for me and a motivator that I took really hard, and I really started to contemplate. And when you talk about, like, people telling you can't build that treehouse that way, you can't do this way, what did you do?
I was like, I'm going to show you I can.
You built a mansion of a treehouse. You built a very beautiful, wonderful treehouse that your kids and your family have enjoyed and loved.
And lived in.
And lived in, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably have HVAC and electrical and all that stuff.
Oh, it's nice.
It's to the nines,
It's got a
right?
composting toilet.
Oh, really?
Which is European in style and phenomenal.
Yeah. Does it have a bidet?
You could use the sink, I suppose, but no, we just use like baby wipes.
Wipes are pretty,
in the garbage.
Biodegradable, obviously.
It's just like a bidet.
Yeah,
I almost have to speak in other languages in this podcast.
We're using some big words, I know. They're like French words, too.
But no, I mean, the whole schooling thing, I have a degree in mechanical engineering, hated engineering, but there were principles that were taught in that have absolutely applied. But can you run an elk hunting website without a degree in engineering? Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why I always, because I know there's you have to be very careful, eggshells. So I want people to understand as they're listening to this podcast and as I'm expressing my own personal journey and the steps I took, it was not easy. And still, I still have a long way to go. But schooling is very important. Education and learning is the most important. You can get that education information. I mean, we're talking about a book.
I was just going to say there's a plethora of books, of audio CDs, all that stuff that can teach you. For me, with an engineering degree, I need to learn a lot about business. I need to learn a lot about management, those sort of things, and it's out there without going to college for it.
Yes.
You bring up something that I'm reminded of. There's a great book out there called The Millionaire Next Door, where they talk about, what actually constitutes a millionaire and who are they, right? Just from like a statistical viewpoint or outside look. But then there's the follow-up book to that called The Millionaire Mind. And that's where they start to go into, well, what's the personality type and what are the traits of that millionaire? What is their mind like? Okay. One is just like they make X dollars. They tend to be, $70,000 to $80,000 in income per year person. They save X dollars. These are your typical millionaires, right? They drive a 5-year-old used car. They paid cash for it, right? So they're profiling millionaires that way. Then later they're like, what's their psyche like? And that's a fascinating book to me. And what they found out was most of them were the kids that were like, in the, had to sit in the front row because,
They were so bad.
they were so stupid,
Yeah.
right? And they couldn't learn unless they, or they had teachers who said, you'll never learn this. You just don't have what it takes. You just can't make it. And there were people who were told over and over and over again, you can't be successful. You can't do it. You're not good enough. You don't have what it takes. So many of those people are the people that make up who the millionaire is. Vice versa. It was very rare, like 10% out of those that achieve millionaire status were the part that were like, you're the best and you can do it all and we've got your back and you're so smart and you're so capable and you're so this. Rarely achieved that millionaire status.
They were so enabled.
And then there are people, of course, who when they're told you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, instead of saying, I'm going to prove you wrong, they believed it and aren't successful.
Successful.
The millionaire mind, though, is the guy that finds a way to be successful even though
all opposition is against him.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's willing all the roadblocks, all the mental blocks, all the stakes are high, the risk. You talk about entrepreneurship, business, even, and we always, it's fun to kind of interject hunting into this. Some of when you think about what Brian's saying, really that that success comes because of a lot of risk.
Yep.
And
opposition.
opposition.
Okay, stop. So my next question, the next thing I was going to bring up was,
So you do have an agenda.
Yeah,
sort
look
of.
at this.
I have an outline. I have thoughts, scattered thoughts.
Wish we had it ahead of time.
Yeah. No, I didn't get the memo.
like
Did
to-
you, Corey?
No.
I like to drop it on the desk
No kidding.
with surprise.
You see that twinkle in his eyes when he
he's
gets
like,
ready to ask another question.
Jordan's about to segue into something I wanted to talk about.
That's right. So there's this quote, okay, and this is a very topic I wanted to get into is risk, okay. There's various levels of risk that when you decide to take extreme ownership of everything that's in your world, you also assume risk, okay. And one of the things that the quote that Leif Babin spoke about was in this book. He says, it's by John Paul Jones, and it says, it seems to be a law of nature, inflexible and inexorable.
Oh, big $10 word.
That
Sorry.
was.
Inexorable.
When you know it's a big word when you can't pronounce it.
It's tricky the way it's spelled.
This coming from the guy
You
that
want
went
to
to
say
college.
inexorable.
Yeah,
but
you
it's
do.
Inexorable.
Okay, you guys stay on topic. It seems to be a law of nature, inflexible,
You got this.
inexorable, that those who will not risk cannot win. That those who will not risk cannot win. That's a pretty bold statement. What do you think about that, Corey?
There's there's two different aspects of that I think are important to touch on. One is risk and one is opposition. And sometimes, risk can be an opposition. And if we aren't willing to face opposition, without a struggle, there can't be strength. And there's got to be that opposition. And for a lot of people, risk comes up, and we're so conservative. I myself am I don't like risk. And it's hard to embrace risk. I like calculated risk, and I like to be able to look at it and say, worst case, best case, and I go for best case. And when it hits in the middle, it's like, I failed. But that risk, I think, can turn so many people away. It's the fear of failing, and you have to embrace risk. Yeah, absolutely, calculate it and all of that, but without taking a chance, there can't be a great reward. That reward is almost invertedly or inversely proportionate to the risk.
What I liked is how he says, those who will not risk cannot succeed. It's like there's no middle ground here. Risk is absolutely necessary
Failure
in
to
all
be
successful.
in all aspects of life, from the smallest decisions to the biggest decisions in your life. Each one of those decisions are taking a risk. Every day when you turn the key on in the ignition to your car and you drive on the road, you're taking a risk.
So how
Are you not?
You are.
You are.
So I'll ask
As small
you,
as that seems, it's a risk.
I'll ask you, Corey, and then I'll ask Jordan. How do you cope and handle with risk? What are some of the words or some of the things you do in your head to to quantify and to deal with risk.
You know, and it's tough. And I think I'm probably a good case study on that because I'm a perfectionist. I'm a control freak. I can do it better myself than anyone else can do it. And I say that very facetiously.
Right.
Because it's hard for me to let go of control. It's hard for me to take a risk. And if you're going to let go of control, you're taking a risk. Somebody else, you're depending on them to do the job for you. And so for me, that's been probably the hardest part of entrepreneurship is letting go of that, taking that risk that somebody else can do it. But the thing that I found, and I think elk hunting, believe it or not, has taught me, life has taught it to me. Elk hunting has made it very vividly in my face that you cannot be successful if you're not willing to fail. And that's a risk that I don't like to take. As a perfectionist, I do not want to fail. When I fail, it's big and, you know, it exposes my weakness to the outside world. I don't want that. I can't live with being a failure. And so learning to understand that you're going to fail. It's a necessary part of it. And there's so much strength and determination and perseverance that comes through failure that if you don't learn that, you can't be successful. So going back to the quote, those who won't take the risk, those who are not willing to accept failure or not willing to fail in the first place, it's impossible to be successful. You have to take those things that make you uncomfortable, those risks, and definitely calculate them.
Yeah.
Don't just wildly go out there and blast away.
Don't
and
shoot from the hip. Don't just like, I'm just going to risk everything today, and that means I'm going to be successful later.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So
Calculated risk.
Yeah, and I just think being willing to fail and learn from the failure and then apply lessons that are going to help you move past it is critical.
And Jordan, what about you? Like, how do you cope with risk?
You know, the quote that you stated where it basically says, like, in order to win, you have to take risks. I've always been a very competitive person from my days in sports to, like, now in business. I'm very.
So when people tell you can't do it,
yeah, I'm
you're
super
ready to
competitive.
prove them wrong.
I'm the guy that's excited to prove someone wrong, and I have to hold myself back a little bit. 'Cause sometimes I get excited to go like, I showed you, like,
how do you like me now?
Yeah, remember that one time we said I couldn't do it, and then I did it, and then like, yeah, that's pretty cool, right?
So the guy at the Christmas party when he applied for a job, did you hire him?
Yeah, and I was like, dude, I'd love to hire you, but I just don't got it. It's weird. I'm sitting here, no, I'm just kidding. But how I cope with it is in my life I've taken a lot of risks myself to get to where I am now. And how I cope with the failure is it's very hard for me because of my competitive nature and, just who I am. I want to win. I want to succeed. I want to strive to be the best. Whatever I'm doing, I am a perfectionist just like you. And I, like you, think that I have the best answers and so what has been a learning curve for me in this process, that's still, we're all sitting here and we have a lot more failures ahead of each one of us, right? And everybody listening to this podcast, you do too. But how I've been able to cope with it is what's my end goal? If I don't have a goal in mind, or if I don't have something that I'm working towards, then that failure, it's easy to just kind of go, oh, well, I failed, like no big deal. You can really brush it off. I'm going to be honest. You can compartmentalize those failures and you can just kind of brush it off and just carry on and accept them and just be like, yeah, so whatever. And I started to do that at one point in my life. I remember very well, in order for me to just accept it, I started to compartmentalize it, get rid of it and just say, oh, yeah, so what? That didn't work, so no big deal, and be comfortable. And I think for me, what's helped me to alleviate those bad habits and to maintain a course towards success is by accepting those personally and saying, okay, this is where I went wrong. And then learning from that and adjusting and making course and saying, this is where I probably need to try again. And then, oh, this worked. Oh, well, this failed. And it's just that repetition. The quote that I love is repetition brings conviction. And you have to be convicted in what you want to do. So when you have a goal in mind and you say, this is my goal and this is what I want to achieve, you have to be willing to know right up front that there's going to be a lot of failures that are going to happen before you achieve that goal.
Yeah.
But if you stay the course and you focus on that goal and you work hard and you never give up, you never surrender, then those failures will come, they will go, you will make adjustments,
Yeah.
And you will continue on, and you will eventually, if you will achieve your goal. And I think for me, the reward then, as Corey kind of stated, the reward then is once you achieve the goal and you receive that reward, that is so rewarding. And then you've now kind of moved yourself, if you will, from here to here. You then the next decision is, okay, well, yeah, I've been successful. I reached this goal. What's next? Mm-hmm. And if you're always striving to continue and make new goals and achieve more, then you're just ready for what I really love. And what's another thing that just came up in my mind that has also helped me is my dad. I say this a lot already on the podcast. My dad's been very instrumental in my life.
Yeah,
if you guys can't tell already. He's been a very successful businessman, and so Casey and I are fortunate. He never let us. He never gave us the easy road. He never enabled us. If I ever wanted to, like I remember if I wanted to snowboard, he's like, well, go figure out how to make some money and go buy one. Yeah. I didn't get it. I never showed up on my door, never showed up on my bed. And so he helped Casey and I learn a lot of good things that have helped us in business. And one thing that he kind of explained to me on this note that also has been a big part of dealing with the failures is my dad always said, look forward to the failures. He says, this is going to be very weird for you to understand now, but he says, look forward to the failures because after comes a blessing.
Yeah.
So if you can understand that when it gets hard, that this is good.
Yeah.
Because what's coming next is even better.
Yeah.
And so to have a good attitude has been really key to be successful and to overcome those things because your attitude ultimately determines your altitude, they say. And so by having a good attitude, you can ultimately determine your altitude to success amongst all the failures and everything. So obviously a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that play into that. But an attitude is huge to cope with those failures, to understand that when those failures are coming, there's something better that's coming on the other side.
When I feel... when I assess risk, when I think about risk, there's always this self-talk that comes into my mind. Okay, if I leave my day job and I do Gritty Bowmen full time,
you started to say if I leave Gritty, and with Jordan saying they're folding up Mountain Ops and you leaving Gritty.
What I mean is when I leave my full-time job, from
a lot of people just dropped out
from the business sector to go Gritty full-time. There's risk there, right?
Totally.
A lot of unknown, huge risk. And so it's scary, right? I've got a great job, pays well, and here I am getting ready to just switch completely and go down this other right, like throw it all away.
I remember these conversations with you too.
That's right. Jordan
we had a lot of late night conversations. I was almost like his therapist. And we were discussing this because he's sitting here.
It's a big deal, dude.
I
got a job.
You're making good money.
I've got, medical bills, benefits. I've got all this stuff, and here it is. You're gonna just go do podcasts? Like it sounds ridiculous.
Everybody thinks you're crazy. Everybody thinks you're crazy.
And a lot of people did, and a lot of people, but there was a whole host of people that were like, why wouldn't you?
Well, everyone wants to be that person. I mean, they envy you being able to do that.
Well, it was scary, but I sit there and I think to myself, okay, what is the worst that can go wrong? And I ask myself that probably every day. When I'm dealing with a risk, I'm like, okay, what's the worst that can go wrong? And then can I live with it? And in the case of this, I launch it, I go out there, it fails, and I go back and I get another job.
Yeah.
I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's really not that big a deal. But we can psych ourselves out.
Sure.
And that's where I think the 4-hour work week really helped me. Because there's a whole section on fear and some of how kind of irrational it really is at the end of the day. I still have a degree. I have years and years of experience in my other career field. That's still useful and beneficial. And I can still find employment in that space and be a successful contributor and get paid the same as I did before if Gritty were to fail, right?
So let me ask you this. If Gritty were to fail, and it's not going to because it's wildly successful, but could you ever see yourself going back, now that you've made the transition, you are at a perfect time to answer this question because it's recent, could you see yourself going back to your life before?
It's a really cool question. It's a good question. The answer is absolutely no.
I know.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
And And I'm glad I took that risk, but it helped me to quantify it, write it down. What were all the extreme circumstances? And there were things I could do to help mitigate the worst of the worst. I have a savings set aside, right, for the transition period. If I had to go and find another job, I have insurance and medical and everything lined up separate, independent of Gritty Bowmen. I have that covered for an X period of time till I feel like I could get a job in another area or make supplemental income of some kind. But ultimately, when I made that jump, and as I was making that switch, what I told myself was, when I had those doubts, what if it doesn't work? What if you can't make it? What if it isn't a thing? What if this doesn't pan out? And then I told myself, well, I'll find a way. I'll find a way. If this doesn't work, or this plan doesn't work, or this product line doesn't work, or this thing doesn't, I'll find another way. I'll learn something else. I'll figure out a way to be relevant and to be successful. And that right there just was like, it's just work. It's just hard work. Yeah. I'll find a way, and then I'll execute. And I'm like, that has helped me go, okay, I can do it.
It's so empowering to be able to take that risk and see it play out. And there'll be failures along the way, but to see the strength that comes from being able to take that leap, to go into the discomfort zone and be like, hey, I did it. It's going to work. Now it's nowhere near as scary to take another risk and keep taking steps.
When you again, going back to you take that risk, so you're sitting there and you're like, oh, it worked. Mm-hmm. It's working. Then the next step is, now what do I do to keep this one going? And how do I just continue to progress and achieve my goals and ultimately achieve more success? One thing that you said that I think is really important, though, and I think you're very animated about it, but you're serious and sincere in it, is you ask the question, could you ever see yourself going back? And your answer is ultimately absolutely not. And the reason why is because, is your job a job?
No, it's passion.
It's a passion, right? I think the thing that is so rare, and going back a little bit to what you're saying, is it's extremely rare to have a job that doesn't feel like a job, right? That is not,
and that pays you,
and
you can support a family with
that job.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not rich.
You're not. Yeah,
like I'm still trying to recover from the pay cut.
Yeah, you're like a thousandaire. It's awesome, right?
But I do what I want.
Yeah. Yep. You wake up every day. Let me ask you. Here's my question to you. When you wake up every day, are you excited to go to work?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sort of like in this stage where I pinch myself every day.
That you're like,
is this really happening?
Still the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, it's like, this is cool.
I can't believe that what I do for work is this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think often a lot when you not just in entrepreneurs, but human nature is, people learn to just accept, and Corey, you touched on this. People, whether they're saying you can't do this, you can't do this, people accept the role of like, well, this is just my job. This is what I have to do to survive. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. You can create whatever complex you want.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah, extreme ownership. If you want to say, well, this is it. This is just what I'm going to work. The next 30 of my life's here. I'm going to be miserable, but it pays the bills. It gets done. Fine. That's okay. Own it, right? Own that decision has been made. But you don't have to. Just like everybody listening, Brian, as an example, and Corey and myself, we're all people who took a risk to gain something greater, to do something that we were passionate about.
I can remember being, at the Fortune 500 company, and working and being like, okay, I just helped make this company another X thousands of dollars. They put a little money into my 401k and I got a salary, but I don't own any of this. Like, I'm not building equity in this space. Like, it's not my baby. And I remember thinking, too, I don't feel like I influenced anybody or made a huge difference in people's lives.
Yeah, what kind of impact was I having?
Yes, and I have this craving, for whatever reason, to, like, make a difference in people's lives. And I felt like I was making a difference at the corporate level, but it didn't for me provide meaning and value to my career. outside of my career, I could still serve and do things for people and do things that I enjoyed. But 8 to 10 hours a day was spent doing something I felt was semi-shallow, like just not for me. You know, there's some people who probably can crunch the heck out of numbers and are just like they're born to be an accountant, right? And they get fulfillment from that.
Absolutely.
Or they love being in that corporate position or whatever. I'm not that guy. I'm different. I'm just not wired that way. And for me, I was just going to a job day after day that gave me the means to do what I'm doing now, but it didn't fulfill me while doing it, right? So I did use the job, and I'm grateful for it.
It was a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's something that people need to understand too, is wherever you are in your life is simply a stepping stone to something else. And that something else can ultimately be determined by what you decide that journey to that next something is. I've had a lot of stepping stones in my life, but I still remember back when I was working for my dad for his company. My dad owns a fastener and distribution company, so they make like nuts and bolts and washers and all kinds of things and distribute it all across the United States. And, technically Casey and I were the next in line, if you want to call it, heir to the throne of the Harbertson brothers that had built this massive business. And I remember when I started working for my dad, we started at the bottom again, like just because he owned the business. We didn't get to start at the best jobs. I remember working on the bag line, bagging up nuts and bolts and, sealing the bags and setting off like the production line, and then moved up to I moved into the machine shop, really got my hands dirty. And then finally the next year, my dad said, okay, now you're going to work in Proform, which is like pulling nuts and bolts. And as I was moving from position to position in his company, I was like, okay, Dad, like I'm learning the value of hard work here, but I'm just not happy. Mm-hmm. Like my dad loves nuts and bolts.
Sounds just like my experience, yeah.
And my father and his brother are just fanatics. They are very good at like the nuts and bolts business. They built an empire. It's great. And I just remember looking at it saying, and I remember sitting down with my dad and I'm like, Dad, I'm not happy. And I don't think that I'm going to keep working for THB for very long. I think I'm going to move on. And I remember my dad kind of was like,
how can this be?
Yeah, son, like
betrayed.
This is, like if you keep working hard, there's
you get to inherit what we created.
Yeah.
Here.
And he didn't even like, that would be awesome if I inherited it. He was like, you're going to have to work for it. That's how my dad was. But ultimately, you've got an opportunity.
Yeah.
And Casey and I got not only from our immediate family, but even from cousins and anybody who knew what we were doing when Casey and I left our businesses. He was going to leave THB and I was going to leave the marketing company that I was working for. And Casey was doing marketing sales for my dad and literally had the opportunity to become the owner eventually of THB, this multi-million-dollar business, and run it. And he decided to take a risk with his brother Jordan, who convinced him, I'm a very convincing person, that we could go build a marketing company and go do something we loved, which is marketing and doing it for outdoor companies because we love hunting, we love the outdoors. And we did it. I remember when we took that risk that day, and not only did our wives think we were absolutely crazy, they were like, are you sure? Like, you've got your benefits covered, all this? You know, you really want... We did it. And it was extremely risky. And I remember working very, very long hours. You talk about, you had to put a presentation together in 2 months and just whatever you had to do to get it done. You had a marketing plan or you had a website to develop and build or whatever, build this campaign for this company. You had to reach your deadlines or you didn't get paid. Yeah. It's simple as that.
Exactly.
And I just remember that I got so excited every day I woke up. I was excited to do this, to do it. And then I never thought or realized, and this is where opportunity comes in. You always have to keep your eyes and your ears open to opportunity because it will come. And you may not realize it if you're not looking for it. But when that opportunity came and Mountain Ops came, you talked to me 3 years ago. I never told you, I never thought I'd be selling supplements. Okay. I'm going to be honest with everybody. Did not have a clue. But the opportunity came, and when it did, there was a big risk. We had a successful marketing company that was working. Trevor had his successful supplement company that was working, and we had this idea to start creating these supplements and products for outdoor hunters and calling it Mountain Ops and then all of a sudden, what happened? Well, as we started to create that company, it was so much funner than what we were doing over here. We were so excited about it. And eventually it took off. And thank you for everybody who's contributed to that success, our wonderful customers, our amazing team here at Mountain Ops, and everyone who has been a part of this great story that's being told. But I look and I wake up every morning. I can say this, and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I wake up every day. And the reason why I ask you the question is because I knew the answer.
Yeah.
Because you and I have talked about this. I wake up every day, and I am so excited to come to work. And I am so grateful for my job, and it really isn't a job to me. Because when you when you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that. And so I think, anybody who's listening is we're talking about all these things. One thing that you should step back and sit and analyze, is what are your passions? What do you love? What do you enjoy doing? And what are you good at? What are your skill sets? What are your talents?
Right.
What are your weaknesses? Understand, respect those weaknesses. What are your talents? And go and find something that you love and want to do. And go and do it.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey says, maybe what you love to do, hardly anybody's getting paid at.
Yeah.
I look at all the podcasts out there, right? And I thought about this, and I'm like, there's a million podcasts out there. And out of all of those podcasts, he's like, in some industries, there's just only the top 5% are getting paid doing it. And he's like, but if you love what you're doing, you'll be in that top 5% if you're truly passionate about it. So maybe you're entering a field where not a lot of people make money at it. But if you truly love it, you'll be in that percentage where you will make money. And it may not be as big a piece of pie as like some other industry, but who cares? You're doing what you love.
When you said it, Brian, you said that you would do anything. Even in, which Corey and I both know this would never happen, right? Gritty Bowmen will never die or never sink. That ship is selling, and it is on course. It's destined for
Thanks for the
success.
vote of confidence.
Hey, it is. This podcast is amazing. That's why you have so many awesome and amazing loyal listeners, and it just keeps growing because you have a great product that you produce. But you said something that I think is important, and that is that you said you would, no matter what, let's just hypothetically say it started to go bad. No matter what, you would find a way, whether it's something else. You would find what makes you happy. You would figure out how to make money doing it, and you would be successful doing it.
I found, like, recently, I bought another camera. I got another lens. I'm learning. I have to learn how to use this new camera. I hate that. I'm learning how to edit using new software. I'm learning how to do photographs, photographs not my thing. I like video, right? And so, and Instagram, social media, Facebook.
You've done so well, by the way.
Thank you.
So happy.
When we first met, I didn't have Instagram. So
I remember even just being like, Brian, why aren't you on Instagram? Like, well, I got a Facebook. Like, all right, okay. So all the 40 to 50-year-olds are all hanging out there. That's cool, But like, there's this cool thing called Instagram. You should check this out. And when I showed him Instagram stories, he's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I have to talk really fast. I don't like doing that.
And then there's Snapchat, and I was like, really?
What's Snap?
But what I try to do is I try to continually learn.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, I have to. It's just part of life. Learning and change are part. Dave Ramsey says the only constant is change. I believe that. I think that you kind of have to always be learning something new and growing, and and especially in today's world, if you don't do that, you'll just fall behind. Jeff Lander was on the podcast with Aaron, and they were talking about the hunting industry, and he was like, 8 years ago, Jeff Lander was saying, my heroes were this guy, and this guy. They're non-existent today.
Yeah.
Like in the social media world, in today's, and all these new characters have moved into the scene, right? So you look at companies that are successful for a 30, 40-year period. They're always adopting change and trying to stay ahead of the curve, and they're not afraid of change.
A risk. Right, they're not. Those
They
companies
don't
aren't
get comfortable
afraid.
and just sit in their rest on their laurels and just keep doing the same thing.
I think that's a really important word, comfortable, because that can relate to so many things in our lives. Being just comfortable that you can shoot a bow, confidently out to 40 yards.
But I like comfortable.
Yeah, who doesn't?
That's my
look at
story.
you guys. You guys are sitting on these really nice, comfortable
And
chairs,
you're
and
sitting
look
there
at
in
mine.
that plastic.
Because you know what? I'm not comfortable. Okay, if you become,
I think your butt's softer.
Oh yeah. I got a great butt. My wife will tell you that. Being comfortable is probably one of the biggest sins that we create as humans.
Errors,
sins, errors, mistakes.
Sin's a little heavy for me.
Hey, it is. I'm sorry. I'm getting all like, churchy in here, but here comes Preacher Jordan. No, we get very complacent. We get comfortable. We begin to rest, as you said, on our laurels.
Yeah.
And that's something that not only personally scares me, not just individually, but even as a company like Mountain Ops, we talk about all the time that we as a company cannot rest simply on our laurels and what we've done in this short infancy.
So how do you
stay relevant?
Yep.
Right?
How do you stay motivated? Because I think it's really motivation.
Yeah, motivation is everything. Again, having a goal, being excited, building something. What's your goal? I mean, we sit down, and Casey and I and Trevor, we sit down. We just had a meeting this morning that goes right into this. And you got to have a plan. I'm sure the book, Extreme Ownership probably talks. I mean, you got to have a plan. But if you don't have a plan, and you don't have a vision of what you want to do or where you want to go or who you want to become or what you want to build, then all you're doing is just working. And what are you really working for? And so to answer your question, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay, ahead of the curve? I look at what we've done in 2 years as just a company and how amazing that is. And it excites me for what we have planned for the next 5 years.
What's funny is, it's been like 2 years for me as well. And I remember running into Casey at the Portland, the Northwest Sportsman Show and being like, who's Casey and what's all this stuff on the counter? And literally it was still a baby company then. And that was my first podcast with Aaron. And I had just made a film that I just submitted to Full Draw. But we were both baby companies, like barely getting, nobody knew my name. I just met Aaron the day before. So, and then to see the growth, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And as you see that growth, you have to be very, very careful to say, this is awesome. But what more can we do?
Yeah.
What else can we do to make this continue to grow? And I think in all these things that we're talking about, there's a lot of things that become kind of like parallel, and there's so many things you should do as an entrepreneur or to be successful in life. I mean, we've only touched and scratched the surface on a few things.
Yeah.
But you talk about learning. And I think really comfort becomes when you just think that you know enough. And you say, I know enough. I'm really good at what I do, and I should just be good with that. And those are some of the civilizations. Those are some of the individuals and some of the communities and companies that have failed terribly. Because once you get to that point where you feel like you've quote unquote we've arrived,
complacent.
You can become completely complacent, and you become completely out of touch.
Yep.
I think you become spoiled even and lazy. And
entitled.
Entitled is a good
So when you finally figure out, whoa, I'm not as relevant anymore, or I'm losing money, or I'm not able to revamp my brand or whatever, by the time that's hitting,
you're behind.
You're pretty far behind. Yeah. But I think a lot of times what people run into is they're like, but I shouldn't have to, I paid my dues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did all this. Like, I have to do that again? Are you serious? I think an analogy you could relate to that is obviously talking about Mountain Ops and supplements is working out, right? And you say this all the time. It's really easy to stay in shape than it is to get in shape.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So all the time in business, you are building this, powerhouse brand that you want to keep strong, and you just want to power through, and you want to beat your competition. And the moment that you start to say, we're the strongest, and you just say, I'm good, you stop going to the gym, you stop innovating, you stop doing all these things, you become soft, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes in the game and says, oh, well, guess what? We're here, and boom, here we go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're playing catch up.
Yeah.
And so as something for everyone listening, it's good for you to stay knowledgeable, to keep learning. Just because you graduate and you get a piece of paper doesn't mean anything. You still got to keep going to school for yourself, whether that's on Google. The internet has so much content and so much information that we can consume and utilize. But always continually be progressing.
Yeah.
Try to find your weaknesses and make those your strengths. You don't have to. You have to accept your weaknesses when you're weak. That's step one. But once you've accepted those weaknesses, then how do I make those strengths?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for me, what was really hard, and maybe a lot of people can relate to this, is I honestly did not like to read a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, the only book that I read a lot was Lord of the Rings. And I joke that I read it more than the Bible. And my dad's like, you probably did.
Yeah.
So it was really hard for me to like sit down and just dive into reading, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this was all through like school, and it was just very difficult. And that was a weakness for me. It's now something I love audiobooks.
Yeah.
Right? Because I love listening. And so as I'm now listening to these books, I'm reading by listening because that's what works for me. And now I'm learning. You guys are sitting here talking about these books, you know, and I'm reading. There's this book that's really good. People on the podcast, you know, if you want to go check it out or not, it's called The Mormon Way of Doing Business. It's this book that's about these successful Mormons. And I'm a Mormon. And so I was intrigued by like, how did these guys that are running companies like Dell and building airplane companies like JetBlue, how did they become successful? And each one of them tells their story of what a lot of the things that we've touched on. But reading has now become something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's become a strength for me as a business owner to stay relevant and to learn from others who have been successful.
I was talking to Corey the other day on the phone. You hadn't been reading a lot. And now
I don't have time to read. And that's, you know, it goes.
But you are reading.
I am, and I'm making time. And I actually listened to an audiobook today. Also, what's Audible? Have you guys heard of Audible?
Dude, that's where I'm at, man.
I've been on Audible so long. I have the old login page you have to reroute to.
Wow.
So I signed up for the free 30-day trial 3 days ago for Audible, so I could download some books to listen to on my drive to Utah. And one of them was a 4-hour work week, and it got my mind spinning this morning, just absolutely spinning. And he's talking about learning to tango in Brazil, and then he's learning martial arts in Japan, and all of these different things. I have no desire to go to Brazil. I have no desire to go to Japan.
Right.
But I have a big desire to have freedom to choose how I want to use my time.
Yeah.
And time, it's not about money for me. Money just pays my bills.
Yeah.
And fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess, time is way more valuable to me.
Absolutely.
And so that's what got my mind. What is important to me? And you talked about having a goal. I think we have to have an objective. Your objective 5 years ago wasn't to start a supplement company and have it be the biggest, baddest, supplement outdoor company in the market.
Nope.
Which it is. Yeah. But that's not the goal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I got one today. Thank you guys. Appreciate that.
So that's not the goal. The objective, you have to set your objective, and there will be a vehicle that will come along that will take you there.
Yeah.
And it goes, my story is very similar, especially to Brian. I know we talked a lot when you were contemplating leaving your comfortable job. I had been there. I worked 10 years in the, memory chip technology sector. I hated every morning. I absolutely dreaded getting in the car. I would almost get anxiety driving to work. So I'm like, I can't do this. And I would get there and I would just go hard and as hard as I could. And I'd look at my watch and it's 8:45 a.m. I'm like, no, I can't make it through another day. And I did that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And, one of the things we haven't touched on that I think is incredibly important, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur and take risks, is having a spouse that supports you.
Yeah.
And I can remember telling my wife, I hate my job. I don't know what to do. I have no other skill set. I don't know what to do. And when I told her I'm going to leave my job, we just had our third child who was literally newborn. And I'm going to leave the job. I'm going to leave all the benefits, the 401k, the medical, the great salary, the vacation time, and here's my plan. I'm going to go into construction, and I'm going to start a construction company as a general contractor. And I'm braced for this. She's like, I'm expecting, nothing about construction. You are going to put our family in this position with our 3 children. And she said, if that's what you want to do, I support you 100%. That gave me the confidence to face that risk, to face that fear. Yeah. I also had another great friend, very successful man, who's in his 70s now, who was a huge mentor to me in business and in just, life in general. But, I was talking to him daily and I said, I'm just scared to death to do this. This is a huge leap out of my comfort zone. And he said, fear can be a great motivator. And it was. It's, he said, you aren't going to work 4 hours a day with that fear on your plate. It's going to push you to work and do whatever it takes to be successful. And, it morphed from that. My wife teases me all the time that I still haven't found out what I want to be when I grow up. But, it morphed from construction, and then it opened more doors to be able to follow my true passion, which is elk hunting. And, now here we are running a website that's, again, I'm a thousandaire. It's certainly not lucrative, but I'm excited for it. It's something that I'm passionate about, to be able to teach other people. I love being able to share my experiences in a way that will benefit someone else. And about something like elk hunting, how can you not get excited about that?
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because when you talk about your tree house, okay, you mentioned something. You said, the Gritty Mama, as I like to call her.
Yes.
She started drawing up plans for your plan, right? What does that tell you? Is that she was 100% on board with what you wanted to do, support. In fact, she got involved in it.
She
right?
didn't say I was crazy. She was like, awesome, let's do it.
Let's do this. And your wife supported you even in your crazy decision. And I think Brian and I talked about this earlier, but my wife, exceptionally same to you. When I started to say, hey, we're going to leave this, here's this is part, and communication is really important in a relationship. Make sure you do that. But even when we started Mountain Ops, we had already been into Mountain Ops 3 months, and it was taking off. And because I was running my company, I was over here, and all of a sudden I go to my wife, who now has just been through 5 years of, excuse my French, hell, with me just working hours and making ends meet and getting it done for our business to grow and be more successspable. To then all of a sudden come to her and say, okay, so remember how 5 years ago we started this company, me and Casey?
We're going to do this again.
Yeah, so we started this company, Mountain Ops. She's like, well, when did you start? I was like, it was 5 months ago or something like that. She's like, are you kidding me? She's like, and she looked at me, and I'll never forget what she said. She's like, really, supplements? She's like, well, okay, why? And I says, well, obviously, that's something that Trevor's very passionate about. I'm starting to learn more. I'm very passionate about marketing the outdoors and this space, and says, it just seems like a perfect match. Yeah. And I says, we've been doing this for 2 months. And then I looked at her and I said, we're going to sell our marketing company, and we're going to go all in on this company. And I remember she looked at me and she just said, okay, well, let's do it again. She was like,
that's just like my wife too. When I tell her what I want to do, she says, okay. I tell her, I think we should move to Colorado. I think there's a good move there. Okay. I say, she just, every step along the way, she wants to support my passion and wants to see me grow and excel or challenge myself. And
that support is so vital, because we have enough doubt. We may come across as trying to be
I think I'm pretty handsome, but that is in direct result to how my wife acts around me. It could be completely false. Yeah. All I know is that she likes me. That's so right. It's huge.
Those insecurities, they're a fear. And without somebody there to support you, and, had my wife said, gosh, I don't know, that sounds crazy. Are you sure that's the right thing to do? That sounds really risky. What if this happens? That just magnifies those doubts that we already have. But to have a support, whether it's a spouse, a
friend,
partner, a friend, a mentor, parent, whatever, having somebody that supports you and believes in you is vital to being successful. The failures are...
That said, if you think about extreme ownership, that if the spouse is against it, is fighting it, or is afraid of what your thing is,
a lot of opposition.
That's I think where in extreme ownership the thing is, well, then you need to find. I failed.
Yeah, not your wife.
Failed, not my wife. I failed in helping her understand, or communicating, or in in previous endeavors I've gone into. I haven't proven what I'm capable of. Whatever,
or explain
it's
the
still
objective
me.
Clearly.
Yeah, it's still me, not her, and so. You take that on and you work through it and you find a way over time so that she is on board, or he is on board.
It's that corny little quote, right? Dreamwork or teamwork makes the dream work, right? It's so true. And I think one other part of that it's funny, but Eric Chesser and I talk about this talk about this a lot. At the same time that you were kind of starting and we were starting, Hush was starting too. They were starting. We were all kind of starting around the same time.
Yeah.
And one thing that Eric and I keep coming back to, and we talk about often, we talk about our wives and the incredible support that they have for us, and being a huge part of our success in being a team, a partner. We have business partners or people you work with, and they are your first partner, right?
Yeah.
And that partnership is so crucial to helping your other partnerships and just helping your success.
Totally.
One thing real quick that that Eric and I often talk about is, if successful people or people that are positive seem to attract other successful people and positive people. And I still remember when we were starting Mountain Ops and getting going, my relationships, like I had known Corey a little bit before we started Mountain Ops. And so I reached out to him. I reached out to him and I was like, hey dude, we got this supplement, we got this thing on. And he's like, oh, interesting. That's okay. Like I'll try it, And I remember Casey met you and reached out to you. And our relationships and our positive impacts that we've had just in 2 years with what we've done, you keep attracting that individual. And so the more that you can surround yourself, what I'm getting at is the more that you can surround yourself with like-minded people and people that believe in you and people that challenge you and want you to succeed and people that are happy and positive, when you create that kind of a environment that you can have and a culture that you position yourself in, you can only continue to succeed, because what becomes a motivator is to be motivated by the success of others and wishing success for them as they in turn wish that for you, and then in turn trying to help each other out to be more successful.
And that's, I think we've all had, I had the conversation with you and with Brian. It's the ships all rising together, the alignment of Gritty Bowmen and Elk 101 and Mountain Ops. As you are successful, it only helps the others be successful. And I think it goes right to aligning yourself. Tim Ferriss talks about you're the average of your 5 best friends. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going for 5 people that are negative, if you're hanging out with companies that are struggling, that are negative and failing, that's going to wear off on you. If you're hanging out with people who are successful and who are positive and who believe in you, that's going to wear off on you.
Yeah, it's infectious.
I remember as the Gritty Bowmen was growing and Aaron and I were becoming better and better friends, there were some other guests I had on the podcast, and I started to get to know Casey and Jordan a little bit, and you guys came to my family reunion, and we were kind of feeling each other out and getting to know each other. But I knew right away that I really liked you guys, and there was just a connection from the start. But the partnerships, I think, are really, really important, critical to my success, especially. And I remember, and then taking risk, because Casey, at one point, a big turning point for me was Casey and Jordan saying, "We want you to come to the ATA show with us and set up in your Gritty Bowmen podcast in the booth and record." And they had been with the headsets and the gear and everything. We had done a podcast inside my parents' wall tent.
The wall tent, I still remember that.
Up at the reunion, and it was a blast. But there was lots of noise and everything. And I was like, no, it works like this. And you can do this show right in the middle of like a rock concert, and you did it with me too.
Yeah, up at Tamarack.
And there was actually a rock concert going on there. And we had a great show. And so they're like, we want you to come and do this. And we have all these relationships we've made, you have some, and we have a lot of faith in what you can do. So we want you to come up here and interview these people that we have connections with, and let's work together to help one another. And I was like, I'm in. And I was scared to death. Like,
I remember as I'm having the talk with him to tell him, hey, I'm lining you up. I've got Eva Shockey, I've got Jenna Waller, I've got this all-star lineup.
It's like,
here's all these people. He goes, oh, okay, yeah. Jordan, sometimes when I do my podcast, I kind of like to know the person. He's like, so
what are we going to talk
So
about?
I guess what I'm saying is I could hear the fear and
dude. Cold turkey, half the names he mentioned I didn't know because I don't really follow. I don't have Instagram, right?
Yeah,
I don't have Facebook,
it's true.
I don't do hunting TV.
He's like, oh, I know these people. He goes, what about these people? And so I'm saying, well, this person does this. And so he, again, he goes and does his own research. Instead of being, waiting for me to tell him, he went and learned about these people so that when they came to the podcast, he was able to have a conversation with them. And he ends up having a great
I made incredible friends, and there were people that surprised me. Like, they weren't on the docket, or I didn't get their names beforehand, and so I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't know you or anything about you. I'm just going to fall on my sword right here. Tell me
you
who
have
you
a headset on, so I need to talk to you.
Yeah. So let's hear about it. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe my audience doesn't know you either, so let's introduce them to you. I'll learn about you at the same time they do. Anyway, regardless, it was scary. It was an intimidating experience. And I think that there are a lot of people, again, not to toot my own horn, but there's a lot of people that are afraid of that failure. Totally. If I go in here and I crash and burn, I'll be so embarrassed, or it'll be such a disaster.
But I remember when you came back from ATA, I'm like, what's a podcast? You didn't know what Instagram was. I didn't even know what a podcast was. And so I'm listening here, and that really, I think, for me anyways, and maybe it's just timing or something, but it put you on the map to have not put you on the map, but I think it exponentially launched you to have all of those guests and to have content like that was consistent and just a whole bunch of content in the docket there.
Oh, for sure. In Mountain Ops, they that partnership made that happen.
Right.
Jordan's like, I'm like, I don't have the money. Like I've spent so much on Gritty Bowmen and gear and equipment and this film stuff, and I've just done this, and I went here and did that, and I don't have vacation time. And Jordan's like, I'll pay for your plane ticket. Just get here. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have the time off from work.
I was like, find it.
And I'm like, okay. So I didn't ask my boss for time off. I just went, as the 4-hour work week recommends. It didn't go over so well when I got back. My boss was like, what do you... You didn't have vacation time. You just left.
On the east side of the country.
And so it was forgiveness.
I remember he was like, yeah, so I'm supposed to be doing like all these PowerPoint presentations and all this stuff, and so I've just been so excited. I've been editing all these where we're sitting in the hotel room and we're doing podcasts, and we're just having so much fun.
Yep.
And I remember he was just so he had every reason to worry why, but I knew I've been in this industry long enough. I know enough to who's in it, how the importance of networking. That's a huge part of success in companies, and is who you know. And I knew that he needed to get to know some of these people.
Needed those relationships.
He needed those relationships and opportunity. And when you want to talk about somebody who had every right to say, Jordan, I can't. I've got work.
Kids.
I got kids. I got a family. I've got all these things. Listen, I just can't do it. And I started to kind of hear those things as I was inviting him. But I remember I said, Brian, I promise you, if you will just come, it will be worth every day that you'll miss at work, every day. If you want this thing to grow and this, I promise you, just trust me. And he just said to me, he's like, well, okay. And he came up with another excuse. Okay, well, but I don't have any money. And I was like, okay, cool. So I got your plane ticket, hotel stay, everything's taken care of. You just need to get there. And he's just like, well, I don't have time off. And I was like, well, you'll figure that out. And he did. I didn't know at the time that he just didn't say anything until he got there. And he's like, yeah, I haven't even told him. I'm just here. I'm like, and I sat there and I was just like,
dude, I was rolling the dice.
How cool is this?
This could go really bad.
It could. And I went through and I was like, you to me, I think you have to go for it. And that's the difference between when you get it done and you're successful and when you don't. And I don't think I slept for weeks during that time. I mean, my voice was gone. I did 21 podcasts in 2 days. They're all about an hour apiece. I mean, that's 10 hours a day of podcasts.
Beginning of the show to the end. I had somebody for everybody.
Every hour.
He didn't even, it was.
And then when I got done, awesome. I was doing PowerPoint presentations in the hotel and getting stuff done for my normal job. And then I was editing as fast as I could. And then for the next 2 weeks, I did the same thing. I had 2 jobs to do. Gritty Bowmen and this other one. And right at this point, I'm not getting paid anything for Gritty Bowmen. 0. So far, it's all just sucked my time and money.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people that are like, how much would you get paid for this? And I'm like, nothing. You did all this stuff without getting paid? I'm like, but I have this vision, and I think it will.
You have to build it. Yep.
So we've been talking quite a while. We probably should wrap this up. But before we do, I just want to ask each of you and kind of the 3 of us Name one thing that you feel is something about what you do or you have done or about your personality that has helped you be successful. That you think is a key. What do you think is about you that is a key ingredient to success?
Corey looks at me. I look at Corey. He's my elder. Give me some advice. Tell me. There's many things, but the one thing that really, I touched on it earlier, and I've even touched on it on a previous podcast, and I may sound like a broken record to everyone who's listening, but it's just what my greatest mentor, my father, instilled in me at a very young age. It's how he raised me. It's what he taught me. It's what he showed me by example, is that your attitude will determine your altitude in your life. Your attitude affects everything. You decide every day what kind of attitude you're going to have. That's your choice. You will choose that. You cannot allow others to decide and choose your attitude. You will choose that for yourself. And because of how you choose to be, whether that's positive or negative.
Do you choose to be a victim or proactive?
That will determine your altitude. So if you want to be successful and you want to be happy, then do it. Be happy. Have an attitude of success. I want to be successful. I want to be happy. And if you choose to find, what I've done is you can get easily caught up in a lot of negativity. You can get caught up in a lot of failure. You can get caught up in so much stuff. But I have trained myself and taught myself that when that negativity starts to creep in or that situation happens, that you find, even if it's one small piece that's positive, whatever that is, whatever inch or centimeter of positivity that is a part of that, hold on to it and focus on it. And if you focus hard enough and you magnify that, eventually you'll be happy. You'll be positive. You'll look at the worst situation and find the most happy thing or positive thing that came from that.
Yeah.
And that is what has been key to my success. That attitude of positivity and being happy and just knowing that no matter what, I every day have that choice to have an attitude of either gratitude, happiness, excitement. That has determined my altitude in my life. And so where I am at now is a direct result of my attitude every day. So that's my advice to everybody listening, is to have a good attitude because it will determine your altitude.
That's awesome. No, and I think mine would probably be similar to that, just, the failure side. And, you mentioned if there's a whole bunch of negative there, find that one speck of positive and magnify that. And I think that plays into failure. We can focus on the failure, the negative part of that, and that will beat us every time. But, to learn from the failure, to let your reaction to a failure define you, not the failure itself. And it's a part of anything we do, of life, of elk hunting, of business. There is going to be failure. And I got a pretty nasty email this week. I did a quick little article on motivation for elk hunting and talked about failure. And my own path in elk hunting, it was 9 years of failure. On my ninth season, I killed my first elk. And the next season, I didn't. And after being successful, we expect success. And that 10th year was probably my hardest failure. 9 seasons of not being successful was tough enough. But then the year after I was successful was the most difficult. And being able to pick yourself up and not focus on that, but focus on that goal, that positive part, like you said. But I think, if there's one thing that I would say contributes very heavily to success, it's failure. And being able to use failure as motivation, to not expect failure, but when it comes, be able to react to it in a positive way.
Yeah.
To be able to build. There's no strength from standing still. It's all in forward progress. And sometimes failure, if it stops us and we stand still, we plateau and eventually crash. Strength is in the struggle. So expect the struggle, embrace the struggle, and overcome the failures.
It's good. I think for me, I really believe that pride and ego rob people of true success and happiness. And it's insidious, and sometimes we think we're pretty humble when we're not, right? Like, pride comes in so many different faces, right? I think for me, and I've said this a few times on the podcast, I think you have to check your ego. You have to get rid of your pride. I think to be ultimately happy as a person and successful, that pride and ego just gets in the way of so many opportunities, and it's self-limiting. And I think at the root of fighting pride is gratitude. And so for me, I really do try to embrace a humbleness, a humble kind of attitude. I try to focus on gratitude and thankfulness for all that I have, and let that combat those negative emotions and the ego and the pride that kind of creeps up in life. And I feel like my willingness to say, I don't know how to do this, or I suck at this, or or not to get angry when someone comes after me, about something, and just try to be as patient as I can, and then also accept criticism and acknowledge, okay, and I'm not great at it. I'm not great at accepting criticism. It's something I've worked on for a long time, and there's a lot of people way better at that than I am. But I feel like that is a key ingredient to being successful, and in extreme leadership, ownership. Yep. Jocko talks about that. The huge part of the very beginning is all about ego. Yep. And there's no room for it. There's no room for it in combat or in team. He talks about ego in one sense where it's what drives us in some ways, or it's a competitive.
Competitive
nature.
Yeah, to be competitive isn't a bad thing unless when you do win, you give yourself all the credit.
Right.
And to want to win and recognizing a team around you that can help you win, and
that's a form of humility,
totally,
and gratitude, while at the same time fighting to be the best. There's that negative side though with the ego, and I feel like for me, that's been a key thing for me throughout my life, is to try to check that ego at the door. And like I said, I'm not great at it. It's always a continual battle. But I feel like with gratitude and humility, there's so much people can achieve in life. Because at that point, it's ego that makes us, and pride that makes us blame other people.
Well, your attitude of gratitude, you'll find a way to be grateful for even the failures.
Yeah.
It's
circular kind of.
It's so circular when your attitude in all things, your attitude towards your ego, your attitude towards your failures, your attitude towards all things that affect you directly or indirectly will ultimately affect you and where you want to go. It's crazy, but
and so when you can be humble, I feel like then you can say,
you're more receptive.
Yeah,
you're more submissive. Up. Yep.
I need to do this better. What could I have done? Instead of saying, man, that guy totally didn't get me. He doesn't get the big picture. He's just an idiot. If he really understood, instead I'm like, man, what could I have done better in this conversation to have maybe swayed him to understand or see it from my perspective? And maybe I'm wrong and this guy is really right, and I have a lot I need to work on in this space. And when you approach it with humility, there's a completely different growth and
a different outcome.
Yeah,
absolutely. Basically, what you're saying in all of this,
because I kind of went around the subject a lot. But.
Yeah, no, but I mean, literally, when Brian's kind of putting this all together, it comes back to stay gritty, right? I mean, that's the motto.
Completely.
Yeah. And
I conquer.
Yeah, staying gritty. And this is how you conquer. And this is why I am the 20-time, elk champion calling up in the world, kind of thing is all these things. But yeah, in all these things that each one of us have touched on, today, if any of you listening can walk away with one thing from anything we've talked about, and this has been a great podcast. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Totally,
Corey, your insight, Brian, so much amazing stuff has been said this evening, and so thank you so much. When you guys walk away from this podcast, just remember, all of you who are listening, all of you, that the only person stopping you from being successful is yourself. And so whatever you have to do to look in the mirror, to change, to alleviate the ego, to accept the failure, to change your attitude, whatever that is, that's dependent on you. So own it, move on, and be successful. Because you're the only one stopping yourself from that. Nobody else is.
Yep,
Totally.
I think you nailed it.
Yep.
You got to. It's gritty.
You gotta stay gritty. Just stay gritty. If you can stay gritty in your life, you're gonna be
good.
successful. That's from Brian Collins. We're gonna put that on the internet.
Just own it and stay gritty.
That's right.
Yep, own it, stay gritty.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And
Thanks for having us.
Just going to say it one more time. Stay gritty. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America. And in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. We thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, Hoyt, Vortex, Phelps Game Calls, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowmen. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them however you can. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.
Guy punching a kangaroo?
Yes, it's like one of the best movies that's going around right now.
Is that awesome what?
In fact, today, Eric Chesser from Hush and myself got on the phone with MMA fighting legend Chad Mendez to get some input from him. And he's actually he sent us a text last night of it. And he's like, dude, I don't know what's funnier, when he punches the thing or when it actually goes like, whoa, like I just got knocked out. And then the guy immediately gets to a stance of like, okay, like he's waiting for the retaliation, for the recoil. And the kangaroo kind of looks at him like, dude, I'm out. Have the dog. I don't
Did
care.
you see that kangaroo comes up like, you want to go? You want to go? And the guy's like, boom, and he just gets that kangaroo in the face, like just right hooks it.
He didn't think he was going to do it.
No,
he did not. He did not see it coming. He was completely blindsided.
that Australian dude, he was ticked when that thing went after his dog. He's like, you want to go? We'll box it out.
Yeah, I can do this. Let's go toe to toe. Then there's a video. There's a lot of videos actually. If you go on YouTube and search like kangaroos hitting humans, there's a bunch
hold
of
on.
them that we started.
If you go on YouTube and you've searched for
I did.
kangaroos punching humans.
Well, because okay, so the conversation in the text thread, Chad Mendez sends this text, says, "Dude, Eric, Jordan, you got to check this out," and we're all just commenting, laughing, like this is just so like I can't believe this happened and was captured. This is amazing. This is gold. And then the after was like, Chad goes, "Yeah, I can't believe that the kangaroo didn't fight back." He looked like he wanted to. And I said, trust me, and they do fight back. So then my next search was Google to find, and I found a plethora of videos where you see the kangaroo guys. Like, there's this one where this guy's fishing on this pond, and this kangaroo is just like hopping along, stops, kind of looks like, what are you doing? And then just gets up on his tail and just two legs, boom, and in he goes. And they got a lot of power too.
Oh, yeah.
They're boxers, right? Whenever you think of a kangaroo, you think of the cartoon with the two.
Well, the risk is really the feet.
Oh, that's where the power's at. Yeah. It's not upstairs. It's downstairs.
But right
here. Boom.
That kangaroo got clocked.
He's so not ready.
They got strong legs but a glass jaw.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yes, that brought a lot of
joy. I watched
joy
it like 3 or 4
yesterday.
times with Suzanne, and she's like, I don't understand why you're laughing this hard. Like, what do you mean?
It's one of those videos.
I was like, every time I watched it and I saw the kangaroo's reaction after he got jacked, I was just laughing my butt off every time.
It's one of those videos that it gets funnier as you watch it. You're at your 10th view, and your wife's probably sitting there going, seriously, you just keep going on repeat? You're watching this thing?
It's kind of like watching Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, I can watch that movie over and over
First time
again.
you watch it, you're like, what is this?
It's almost educational. As you watch Napoleon Dynamite over and over again, you start to learn more things. You're like, I did not know that.
Oh, totally.
Well, that's because you didn't grow up in the 80s.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm just like...
For Brian and I, it's just a reminder of our childhood.
It's
like,
unreal.
Was time really like that?
Well, and more for Corey than for me because he did grow up in Idaho.
Well, I was going to say,
they drive by in the
frames,
bus and they shoot that cow in the field, like in front of all the kids on the school bus. That didn't happen in Oregon City.
What?
No.
Tina, come eat your dinner.
Fat lard.
You fat lard.
Nunchuck skills.
Yeah, you could say I've been pretty much chatting with babes online all day. That's right. Don't be jealous.
You're too good at that accent, by the way.
I know. We talk about that often, that I'm too good at that little lispy, So what are you guys doing today? You guys feel pretty excited to this podcast? Like, I'm pretty excited to do this. The best line from that is when he's describing the girl that he's, what's her name?
Corey's wondering how he got suckered into this conversation.
I'm like, man, I brought it up. I thought it would be funny. Now we're on.
But
the whole
think about it.
podcast is going to be about Napoleon
Isn't it
Dynamite.
Sandra? What's the girl that he's online dating?
Shaniqua.
Isn't it? She's pretty. She has pretty sand blonde hair in real life. That movie's one of the all-time favorites. Like, such a classic.
Right here, dude. Here it is. Right here. All right. This dude is. He's running out there.
The kangaroo has his dog in a headlock.
And he's like scratching. He's like hitting it with his feet.
So look
at this.
They're toe to toe. Boom! The best is how they edit it. Drop the glasses, like Thug Life. Like, if you thought
he's like, come on, dude.
You see the kangaroo's like posturing.
He's like out of here. They have a slow motion scene where he comes up on it and they show a zoom in.
I want to meet this guy because I want to kind of get his thoughts on as that transpired. At what point
cautious.
would you actually fear for your life?
Look at that. Look at him get his dukes up. See, the more you watch it.
Oh my
There's
God.
a better video of it, dude, where you see the close up of that kangaroo.
Oh, and the kangaroo's got his paws down low, and then it hits him and brings him up. Like, all right, I got to get serious
Yeah,
here.
this guy is. I thought we were. I thought he was going to give me a second. You know,
Yeah.
I was going to just put him on his back.
Right.
No. Yeah, let's just remember
they
the
have
food
it in
chain.
slow motion when he goes, and he hits him with that right cross, and the thing goes. Its head jacks back and its eyes are huge. Like, I just got jacked.
Its lips are rippling from the impact.